Item: SCP-715. Object Class: Safe. Special Containment Procedures: Outdated. See below. SCP-715 is to be contained at its point of origin within the City Mall in Ohio. Remote surveillance of SCP-715 has been authorized, and any images produced by SCP-715 are to be collected by Foundation personnel posing as mall employees. These images are to be returned to Site-81 for further examination. Keter Class Containment Procedure Amendment: Outdated. See below. SCP-715 is to be contained within a maximum security large item locker at Site-19. Access to SCP-715 is limited to personnel with 715/4 special clearance or above. Under no circumstances are any personnel, regardless of classification level, to enter or activate SCP-715 in any way. Examination of the interior of SCP-715 is to be done by a remotely controlled drone only. Instances of SCP-715-B are considered Class V cognitohazardous entities, and due to their nature cannot be properly identified without the use of optical enhancement technology. Instances of SCP-715-B are to be terminated immediately upon identification using whatever means necessary. Safe Class Containment Procedure Amendment: SCP-715 is to be contained within a maximum security storage locker at Site-81. No other containment procedures are currently necessary. Foundation personnel are restricted from any interaction with any known instance of SCP-715-B. Information regarding Site-81/715 is on a need-to-know basis. Administrators with the proper security clearance may view this information at the end of this file. Description: SCP-715 is a take-your-own photo photomat model photo booth manufactured by the Sony Corporation in 1972. SCP-715 displays no anomalous characteristics in its design or appearance. A small metal tag has been added to the backside of the machine, but significant wear has obscured any text contained on the tag. SCP-715 has been known to animate sporadically, producing images believed to be modified from previous shots. The impetus behind this activity is currently unknown. Images produced by SCP-715 are often heavily distorted. Individuals exiting SCP-715 are to be classified as SCP-715-B instances, and do not appear outwardly anomalous. SCP-715-A instances are currently contained within Site-81/715. Research into the nature of these instances is currently restricted. SCP-715-A instances. Data restricted. See below for additional information.